Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do a relatively basic introductory video for those of you that are interested in Hex but don't know a ton about it, and have also heard of HDRN and ICSA, and you're kind of interested in all of those things but want an introductory even to Hex. And I've been getting a lot of requests for this, and so I wanted to make this video. I think this is going to be valuable for some of the newer people into the whole, even the Hex ecosystem. And this is just specifically how to get into Hex and some of the advantages for getting into Hex a certain way. You will have more optionality if you go into Hex the way that I'm going to describe in this video, and I'll try to do my best to just outline some of the basic fundamental things to understand with Hex, and definitely do hopefully a good job explaining the original way to get into Hex versus the HDRN and ICSA method, and you're just going to have some more features and optionality than you'd have the other way. So let's just jump right into it. Here is app.icsa.pro. I've spent a lot of time on my channel talking about this, talking about game theory and just lots of cool different aspects of this project. It goes really deep. It's really fun. But let's start with Hex itself. And if you're not into Hex, then I want to just explain where you can buy Hex. I think the simplest place that I've found to buy Hex is hex.com. Of course, HEX.com. And if you log in, you can see, I'll move myself out of the way. You can see right here on the side, you can buy Hex right on this website. And if you do not have a wallet already, then even this website itself gives you a link to the MetaMask wallet. That's what I would suggest using to get your funds into in order to buy Hex and interact with the HDRN and ICSA projects as well. But hex.com, I think it's the easiest place to get Hex from that I know of, and you can get it there. So let's say that you have purchased some Hex and now you're interested in staking it. Staking is, I think, unquestionably a huge part of Hex itself. And I want to just talk about some of the basics of staking from the perspective of HDRN and ICSA, and even compare to the standard Hex stake. And I'll try to make some sense of this. So if you log in, this is app.icsa.pro, and I'm just going to type that here. I'll also have this in the description, but it's app.icsa.pro. That's what I'm looking at right now. And I want to talk about this from a new perspective. So if you bought your Hex, you would see right here in the top left, this is the amount of Hex that you bought. It's just sitting there, and you have the ability to get yield off of this Hex if you stake. So before I go further, I do want to talk about something else that is sitting here at the top of this page, which is the Hex T-Share Price. And I think I'm going to explain this because this, I think, helps you figure out how much you should stake for, how many stakes you're going to want, and some of these basic things. So all this number is the amount of Hex, 24,153.6, amount of Hex that it takes to get one T-share. What is a T-share? So basically, there is inflation in Hex. Hex inflates roughly by 3.69% per year. And all of that inflation goes to stakers, goes to the stakers. And that's all good and dandy. So if you're just holding your Hex in your wallet and you're not staked, you're not getting this inflation. You're just holding the same, but you have the ability to capture that. And I'll just tell you some really basic numbers right off the bat. If you stake, so you have the ability to stake from 1 day to the max length stake is 5,555 days, which is roughly 15 years. The difference in yield from a minimum stake length to a max stake length, if you did the minimum stake length, you're going to get a little bit less, I believe, than 10% yield. And if you do the max stake length, you're going to have about a 30% yield per year. APY, your APY is 10 for a short length, and for a max, the APY is about 30. And these can totally change, but I'm just telling you what they are now. And I also want to explain this a little bit further. So cool, it takes 24,153.6 hex to get one T-share. So basically, in order to get the yield, it's everyone's T-shares together are, of course, they're the stakers. They're what's getting that 3.69% inflation. Your percentage of the total shares is your percentage of that inflation. And like I said, short lengths are getting close to 10%. Max lengths are getting today, if they were staked today, would get around 30%. And an important thing to realize is that this number only goes up. So over time, it takes more hex to get one T-share. Like if you have $1,000 worth of hex today and you stake it, you're going to get more T-shares than you would next week. And that will be the case as long as hex exists. It'll either be the same or greater every day further. And it's just an incentive to stake early. And it's also an incentive to stake longer, because the reason that this hex share price goes up, the hex share rate goes up, is it makes it so that longer stakes will always have more yield, all things otherwise being equal. They'll always have more yield than shorter stakes. So I want to just try to give a really simple example of this. So if someone staked for 5 years, that person will always have more yield than, for example, the same person. Let's say that they staked 10,000 hex for 5 years, and someone else staked 10,000 hex for 1 year. At the end of that year, they reinvested all their yield, that interest. Some people think of it as interest, but they took their yield and they reinvested it at the end of the year. So now they have 10,000 hex plus their yield, and they reinvested it at the end of that year for another year. And they took that yield at the end of the second year, reinvested, and they did this 5 times. And so at the end of the 5th year, they are unstaking at the same time as that one guy right over here is unstaking. At the end of the year, this guy will always have less total hex than the guy that just staked one stake for 5 years. Even reinstaking, never pulling it out and reinvesting over and over and over for 5 years, just as an example, will always end up with less yield than the guy that staked that full length right off the bat. The Hex T-Share Rate makes sure that will always be the case. It always incentivizes longer. And of course, we want long stakes because those people are protecting the price. Because if they're staked for that long, it's pulling it off the market. It takes it out of supply, out of viable supply. If we're incentivizing Hex to remove the users of Hex to remove their Hex from supply, then if demand is equal, the price rises, right? And we just want to make sure that our system is set up so that we properly incentivize longer stakes. And this T-share rate is just one of those ways that if you stake longer, you're getting rewarded more. And that's all that is. And I think that I'm telling you this, it's important to realize, but it also helps you, I think, decide how many stakes you want and how long you want them for. And it's just part of the beginning process. So let's say that we want to now make our Hex stake. Well, actually, before I get too far, I want to tell you guys something else. I'll just tell you for me what I've done. So I have staked one or two stakes ending every year, basically until 15 years. I do have some gaps as it gets closer to 15 years, just to be completely transparent with you. But for the most part, I have 1 or 2 stakes ending per year. The reason I haven't gone crazy and done way more than that per year is just simply because in order to stake, it takes an Ethereum transaction fee. And in order to end my stake, it takes an Ethereum transaction fee. And the end stakes can be kind of expensive. I would say expect paying between, $60 and like $300 depending on how long your stake is and how expensive the transactions are at the time. And you just want to have enough hex there so that if you end the stake at the end of its life, the value of the hex is worth, meaningful amount more than the transaction fee itself. And so I think about that. So for me, it's been 1 or 2 stakes ending a year. And I feel pretty confident with my 5,555 day stakes. That's the max length stake that the contract allows you to make. And I'll tell you why max length stakes are, there's some pretty cool advantages for doing that. And I'll talk about that too. Another thing that I think is worth thinking about is that I have weighted my biggest hex stakes are ending timing with when I think the bull runs are going to be. Like if I have to end my stake, why I should try to probably end it when I think prices are high, right? And I don't know. None of this stuff, this is all speculation. No one knows when the bull run's going to be. No one knows if we're even going to have a bull run, yet alone when. I think we are, but I'm just being clear. I'm not telling you what's going to happen. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. So I have my biggest stakes ending, for example, in 2024 and 2025. And that's just because the bull runs in crypto tend to be spaced out about 4 years. And that would be the rough time frame of when the next bull run would be. And I'm just telling you, some of the thoughts that I've had in deciding when to stake for how many stakes and when to end some of the bigger ones. So let's actually go to what does it look like to create a stake here. So let's go over here to create stake. It's going to bring this up, and all you got to do is type in the amount of stake that you want. So this is how much hex you want to stake. Let's just say it doesn't matter. I would suggest doing more than 100, but let's just do 100. And then the stake length of, let's just go 5,555. Just as an example, a max length stake. And let's go to here. So if this is stake type. We have 2 options, native and HSI. I'm encouraging people to go with HSI, and I'm saying that because, for me, all of my new hex stakes will be HSI encapsulated Hedron stakes, and there's a lot of functionality that I think there's a lot of meaning in for going this route versus native. And there's some things I want to clarify here. Native hex stakes is the same. This contract, even though we're on app.icosa.pro, if you do native, it's using the hex contract. Everything's the same as if you had gone to go.hex.com, where a lot of people have made their hex stakes from. It's the exact same thing. But if you go to gohex.com or you make a native stake here, you, for example, cannot transfer your hex stakes out of that account. If you do a 15-year stake or a 10-year or a 5-year or a 1-year, whatever length you want, it is stuck in your account for the life of your stake. And if you do an HSI encapsulated stake, you have the ability to transfer over time your hex stakes. So you can transfer it into, if you make a bunch of stakes, you can over time move them to another account. You can create a stake this way. If it's an HSI stake, you can transfer that to a friend. You can even sell your hex stakes on OpenSea, which I think I have. You can sell it on OpenSea also right here. So this is what it looks like. You can go on OpenSea right now and buy these if you'd like. But you have a lot of optionality, and I'll cover even more than I'm saying here. If you go with HSI encapsulated stake, as I said, I will always be doing mine this way. If you want to interact with the Hedron and ICOSA contract, then it's even more important that you use an HSI encapsulated Hedron stake. So you've gone ahead, put in the days that you want. Let's make this the hex that you want. the stake length, chosen HSI if that's what you want to go, if that's the route you want to go. I'll keep talking about this, the features of it as we go. And then you just click stake hex. And awesome, cool. If you did that, you just staked your hex and you're getting yield. The HSI gives you the exact same hex yield. It does use the hex contract to do that. It's the same real hex that you get from an HSI that you would have gotten if you did native. It's a real hex and it's using the real hex contract. It's just giving it extra functionality like transferability. So this right here on this page, let's move myself out of the way, is a native hex stake. And let's talk about this. So a native hex stake gives me mintable hedron. So every day, no matter how you staked your hex, anyone that has ever staked their hex and their stake is in process right now, they're getting mintable hedron every single day. And I'll tell you that this number goes up every day, just like the hex yield goes up every day. But this number it's the number of B shares. The number of B shares that you have is the number of hedron, mintable hedron you get every day. So if you had 12.87 B shares every single day, you're getting 12.7 hedron at this point. Awesome. It just happens. You know, you're getting this for free. You don't have to do anything. This is not showing up in your account yet. You have to run a function. In order to get that in your account, you just go over to actions, click mint hedron, and then you pay the Ethereum transaction fee and it shows up in your wallet. Sweet, awesome, cool. You got this cool new token and you got it just for staking your hex. Of course, realize if you're going to run an Ethereum transaction fee to get your hedron, make sure that the amount of hedron you have here is worth more than the transaction fee, right? Just a simple basic observation for you. But that's what you can do if you're with your native stake. You might already have native stakes. If you do, they'll show up here and you might have a bunch of mintable hedron there and you can decide to mint it or you can just let it accrue. And that's really all there is to that. So let's go a little bit further. So here is, I just went to the hedron tab and this is a HSI. So this is HSI encapsulated. You can see it right here. This is the way that I'm suggesting people do it. It's the way that every new hex stake for myself is going to be this way. There's going to be another little tab here. So we've got the same thing. We get mintable hedron if we do an HSI. We get our accruing hex, just the same as always. But we also have this right here. So we have advanceable hedron. So all the advanceable hedron is you know, on the mintable hedron is just the number of B shares every day added every single day. The number of B shares is the number of hedron we get over and over and over. This amount right here is our B shares times the remaining days. So this one was a max length stake of 5,555 days. So that would mean that this 12.87 B shares times 5,555 days, if that's how many days are left in the contract, that's how much advanceable hedron I have. And all that means is that I can borrow this if I want. And right now, I'll tell you, this is, in my opinion, one of those optionality things. You do not have to borrow this. It's up to you to decide if it's worth it. I'll tell you, for me, it's not worth it. This value is just too low for me relative to the value of my hex. It's my hope for this Hedron and ICSA contract that the Hedron will rise in value so that for a 5,555 day stake, I would like to see eventually this advanceable Hedron amount be roughly equal to the value of hex. So if I had $10,000 worth of hex for a 5,555 day stake, I'd like to see the advanceable Hedron be worth close to $10,000. And then I think it opens up a whole world of pretty cool optionality. Hedron and ICSA are new, and I think the prices are and the confidence in the contract and a lot of things are still being figured out. And right now the price is pretty low. And so I'm not interested in borrowing, but you don't even have the option to borrow if you don't do an HSI. So why not just leave that open for the possibility that the price will rise and you can borrow against it? That's kind of my thinking, but realize that's what you can do. If you do borrow, you're going to pay, since you're borrowing, you got to pay it back, and it's paid back in Hedron. That's the currency of it. And I hope that's not too crazy or anything like that. Just a good, cool thing as a part of this contract. So I want to cover some other very cool, fancy stuff you can do. And all of this is options. I'm not telling you to do any of this. If you do an HSI, you have the ability to sell your HSI. If you go to this ICSA tab right here, you have the ability to sell your HSI, your wrapped hex, to the ICSA contract. And I'll tell you when this makes sense to do and when it doesn't. So this really, in my opinion, only makes sense to do, for the most part, if you have max length stakes of 5,555 days. If you have a 5,555 day stake, that's 15 years. It's forever, right? Well, if you have an HSI that's 5,555 days, anytime you want, you can sell your HSI to this ICSA contract. In return, you get ICSA. And right now, in more or less as long as this ICSA contract has existed, which is not a long period of time, the amount that you get back is worth, the amount that this ICSA is worth for doing this is worth your hex in your HSI. So if you had $10,000 worth of hex for a 5,555 day stake, you would get roughly $10,000 worth of ICSA back. And so that gives you the ability to, anytime you want, sell your hex stake for the value of the hex in your stake, because you can take this ICSA, of course, and sell it on the market. And that's a huge, crazy, like I was telling you earlier, if we go, just as an example, if we go to Hedron, this amount right here, I'd love to see the Hedron value, the advanceable Hedron amount for a full length stake be worth the hex, but it's not, right? The ICSA is worth it. So you can sell your HSI and get the full amount out. If it's a max length stake, I'll tell you, if it's a 1 year stake, don't do it. I would suggest not doing it. You can do whatever you want. It's just not going to be worth the hex in it. It's the full length stake. And I don't want to get into too much of the game theory or the way the contract works necessarily, but that's a truth. And it's some functionality and another reason why you should do, I think you should use an HSI. You have more optionality. I want to tell you though, let's just go back to this screen, why people are saying not to do this. One of the arguments against it. You have a lot of optionality with this HSI stake. One of those options gives you the ability to sell your hex for the dollar amount, right? If it's a max length stake. Sometimes people are saying, don't do this because you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to sell at the bottom of the market. You have the ability now, if you have a bunch of fear in hex, to sell at a terrible time. And I would suggest too, if you don't trust yourself, do a native stake and lock yourself out of the ability to sell at a terrible time. But if you have trust for yourself, well, to me, it's like, why not have more optionality and go ahead and do an HSI stake? So those are some things. Another thing I'll just cover really quick. So for the native and the HSI stake, as I said, you are getting mintable Hedron. You can mint that, sell it on Uniswap. You can also take that minted Hedron, come over here to ICSA, and you can stake that Hedron in this Hedron staking. Like right here is 10,000 staked Hedron, and there will be a minimum staked length of 30 days. It might be more. If you have over 1 billion Hedron, then you'll probably be in the 90-day minimum length. The more you have, the longer you're forced to stake for. But if you have Hedron, you can stake it here and you can start getting ICSA. And of course, if you get ICSA, after the minimum days are up, you can end your stake and you can pull out the ICSA yield, and you can sell it on Uniswap again, or you can go over to the ICSA staking pool, and if you stake it here, you're going to get yield again in ICSA, and you're going to get yield in Hedron. And so you have the ability to, from that Hedron you're get more Hedron, more ICSA, and from that ICSA getting more Hedron and ICSA. So there's some other things to do if you want to hold in the meantime. You can accrue your Hedron and stake it. If you don't want to sell it, you can stake it and get ICSA. You can compile on itself if you're one of those people that are pulling supply off the market by staking. The contracts are rewarding you basically for protecting price by pulling that and pulling the Hex, Hedron, and ICSA off the market and staking it. You get extra yield for that as you are protecting price, and those are some things that you can do. So this is an introduction to Hex, where to buy it, how to stake it, the difference between native stakes and HSIs, some of the crazy cool things that you can do with HSIs, like transferring it. You can borrow against it. You can give up your HSI to the ICSA contract in return for ICSA. If you have a max length stake, that ICSA right now is equal to your Hex value. And you can kind of have some familiarity with the different tabs here in the contract and what some of the things you can do are. Anyway, this is just an introductory. I hope this is helpful to you. I hope this makes sense for those of you that were asking, that have been interested in Hex, that are hearing about Hedron without knowing a lot about Hex. I hope this covered some of the basics for you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one. Have a great day.